Hello friends, welcome to episode 104 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sarah.
I'm Rob.
How we doing, Rob?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
We have been doing this.
2 years.
So, happy second anniversary to us.
You too. Here, we actually have glasses.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Yes.
Try not to make messes.
All right. Well, here's to many more.
Yeah. Like, where this... sometimes I think about... It's weird. Like, I was saying as we were letting the music play in, that it felt like this year was a year longer than one.
Yeah.
Like, it was actually two. Because I was going over taxes stuff, and I was like, oh, yeah. I was like... didn't you have additional expenses at the beginning of this year for the podcast? I'm like, no, that was last year. That was totally last year. And then I look at my expense list and I'm like, oh God, no, I set up the show here. Oh Lord, that was 1 year. Oh Lord,
the whole home studio.
Yeah,
it
so
feels like forever ago.
It does. It really, really does. It feels a lot longer.
And forever before that we were at Podcast Detroit, and yeah, I mean,
that went by in a flash. Honestly,
it did.
Surprisingly went by in a flash. I mean, it was a good experience. I'm glad we started there. I'm glad we started in that way because it kept us really motivated. Yeah,
we had a 1 year anniversary here.
Yes.
Yeah, it was one of the first shows we did because it was right after the pandemic hit.
Yep.
And it was right around then that we were moving from Podcast Detroit to the home studio. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
God, I haven't thought about the timeline in a little bit there.
Yeah. Definitely. It's weird thinking about it, that like how we cut it, but it worked out that we wrapped pretty much the end of the year with them and then picked up at the beginning of this year here, and how quickly we were able to put everything together and get it rolling.
Yeah.
I mean, the transition.
Job on that,
yeah, thank you. The transition worked out a lot better than I expected it to. I expected there to be a lot more hiccups, but no, it's been good, and we kept all of our previous episodes and everything.
Yeah,
and the catalog kept rolling. So if you're missing any, you can go back and get them. That's the good news. It's all up on Blueberry, and Spotify, and freaking iTunes, and like
pretty much everywhere you can listen to podcasts.
We were actually looking at numbers last night, and looking at some of the other places that are casting it. Like Castbox has our stuff. Like there's a lot of places that pull our stuff and pull it in. So yeah. And to you in Argentina who are listening to us, we thank you.
Yeah, we've apparently got at least one listener in Argentina.
A strong listener in Argentina, if not several. And so, we would always join our Discord, please.
Yeah, hello to you.
We or at least tweet us something.
Right.
That'd be great. We'd love to know how we made it down to Argentina or across the pond to Europe. We've got some listeners in Europe. So that's intriguing. So
I know I plugged the show subtly once or twice on Reddit, a couple of discussion forums on like behind the screen and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I plugged it on the D&D forums on occasion.
Yeah.
But it's been I think it's been a good 6 months since I've done that. So.
We're
also really bad at marketing.
And big shout out to everybody here in our live chat as well. We've opened up the live chat to everybody on our Discord, not just our Patreon members. Yeah. For this episode, we were just actually Knox on the Box was just talking about standing there and kind of ushering everybody to their seats in the live chat here and just showing them where the restrooms are. And we got into the discussion of washing your hands. And I was just about to tell this story about how since the pandemic's gone on so long now, one of the things that kind of came up when they were really pushing the always washing your hands and making sure you're washing for 20 seconds is having a hand washing song.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many other people have done this or not, but you have a song that you sing to yourself so you know when 20 seconds is up.
Well, Google and Alexa almost immediately had a thing that would you could just say it. So Vicky did that a few times, and it's a random song that they give you that's the right length.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. But I think your idea definitely stuck in your head a lot longer.
Well, I read on Tumblr somewhere that the first verse of Welcome to the Black Parade by My Chemical Romance is 20 seconds if you sing it right. And so that became my hand washing song, and it's gotten to the point now where I can't wash my hands without starting to sing "Welcome to the Black Parade."
It becomes Pavlovian.
It is. Yeah. It is full on Pavlovian at this point.
That is hilarious. That is hilarious. Yeah, I would say that, we've been good. It actually, with the pandemic and everything, it actually had us like create our own pod so we could keep doing this without a problem. And I think it worked out really well. I mean, it definitely kept us moving week to week. Like, we say it's therapy, and we kind of joke about that, but in a lot of ways it was.
No, yeah.
It definitely kept us motivated. It kept us making us think. It definitely made us do a lot of research that we didn't expect.
Yeah, absolutely. I know personally, I've talked a lot about my depression and stuff like that. And of course, you add the anxiety, the daily anxiety and dread of a global pandemic on top of all that. And spoons have been at a real premium for me lately. So having a weekly event where I'm kind of forced to get out and go and talk with my friend for an hour about a hobby I love and share that with people in the live chat and such like that has really kept me in a routine, and that's super valuable for people like myself who struggle with that. So I mean, we joke a lot about it being therapy, but no, seriously, it really is.
It really is.
So but yeah, no, and the amount of research that we've had to do for the show is, like, man, I found myself digging into games I didn't even know existed.
And finding some fantastic
things.
Some
absolute gems, yeah.
I think for me, it was less about the new systems, although a lot of the systems I knew components of, I didn't know how connected they were. Like, finding out when I was, like, I thought I had known where Robotech was at, and how it had had gone through all of its iterations with different things. I did not realize how far it had really come. And how, that we are now moving into Powered by the Apocalypse version of it. And there's a full version there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Powered by the Apocalypse, Robotech?
Yeah. There's a full version there.
How about that?
Yeah. Huh. So, it's interesting.
And then speaking of Palladium games that have migrated,
yeah,
and we found out that Rifts had completely under the radar just moved to Savage Worlds.
Yep.
And then recently I've been hearing chatter about Savage Pathfinder as well. The Kickstarter for that has happened, and I guess the initial kind of like beta test copies of the rules have started going out to people. So it's not the complete set, but you've been getting some initial impressions about that. And, so far, I don't know. Maybe they're mixed, but I don't think Pathfinder. I'm not really the target audience for Pathfinder anyway. So
agreed. I never really got attached to it. Like, every time someone would bring it up to me, I'd be like, and why would I be intrigued in it? They're like, oh, well, I love it for all these reasons. Okay, you know me, that doesn't jive with anything I really like.
Yeah. Pathfinder's a very crunchy game system with a lot of floating modifiers and stuff like that, and it's really great for people who do like to do all the as our friend Stephanie says, all the nerd math.
See, I thought of Pathfinder as a legitimate Munchkin.
Oh yeah, kinda.
Like, if you've ever played Munchkin, I have the book of Munchkin because I needed to know. And it is very thick and very ridiculous, but 100% playable at its ridiculous levels.
Yeah.
And when somebody started telling me about Pathfinder, we're like, is this just a joke about Munchkin with a different cover? Like, really? And they were like, no, this is legitimate. I'm like, really? And
there were, coming from 3.5, D&D 3.5 myself, there were actually legitimate, like, when I was still in D&D mode, D&D 3.5 mode, I should say, long before I ever knew what 5th edition was, I gotta say, I really liked Pathfinder a lot. They did a really good job of cleaning up and building upon the foundation.
No, I agree.
3.5 left.
I would agree with that.
But at its core, though, it's still an offshoot of D&D 3.5, and it still definitely wears those clothes.
Yeah. Like, I feel like D&D as a whole, like, if and when we get to 6th edition, whether it be called 6th edition or it be called something else,
sure,
I feel like we're going to get closer to more narrative. I think we're going to be drifting further from tactical.
You do?
I do. I think we are. I think we are getting to a more simplified system with each step, which is good. I think we're coming closer to having more world in D&D than mechanics. I think I've really started to appreciate the amount of lore that they've brought back to the game, and each time they put out a new edition, they're trying to give us more of that and more lore, and that lore that we're getting includes things like new monsters, new locations, new worlds, new things like that. But a lot of it is just taking the existing mechanics and saying, okay, now this mechanic attaches here in this way, but you can see that it's the same mechanic being reused, and that's okay. There's Legos works for a reason.
I mean, I think one of the biggest bonuses of D&D 5th edition was how accessible it was, and of course, I mean, it's obviously riding on the back of success of things like Critical Role and stuff that dragged it into the spotlight, but at the same time, I don't think it would still have that success, even with, the celebrity D&D mainstreaming of it. I don't think it would have happened quite the same way if the game weren't as accessible.
Oh, I agree.
To new players as it is.
Yeah, one of the best things they did was bring back the basic adventure box and get people rolling instantaneously.
But even the rules, though, I mean, the rules are super simple. They threw out a lot of those modifiers. They put it down to advantage and disadvantage and stuff like that. And I know I've said it before on the show, and I will say it again here because it's topical. Is that I was attempting to update one of my own favorite low rules settings at the time for my current Elder Scrolls game.
Yep.
And that was Warrior, Rogue, and Mage. And I had added a bunch of stuff onto the foundation of Warrior, Rogue, and Mage, and kind of made it a rules medium setting. And then I found out about D&D 5th edition well after it had been released.
Yep.
And I was like, holy crap, I can stop writing because they did it for me.
Yeah.
Like, this is exactly the game system I was looking for.
And I will say it's worked fantastically for you.
And now the funny thing is that tonight, after the show, I'm getting together with my friends on Discord to discuss not playing D&D anymore.
Well,
it's the perfect system for my game until it isn't.
Well, I think you've come to a point with this game and your sessions that you want more narrative.
Yeah. I've always liked the narrative style play. I greatly appreciate what you're able to do with 7th Sea and such like that. And I see the value in having rules support for things like social gameplay.
Yes.
I like the system of drama dice and whatnot, rewarding good role playing and whatnot.
Yep.
I at first I kind of wanted to try Fate, but Fate's just not the system for our group. I think I find Fate a little difficult to get into because it's so it's a little too, I think ephemeral is the word.
Okay.
There's not quite enough hard numbers in it.
Okay.
And everything's kind of up to interpretation because your aspects are just word descriptions.
Yeah.
And the few times that we did try to play it, it felt like there was almost like a negotiation going on between the storyteller and the player, going like, no, it totally fits because this word means this. It's like...
But I mean, it all depends on who you're playing with as the group. I mean, that's really what... I mean, if you're going from a tactical group that literally rules lawyers, that's what you're going to get out of it. Because I would never bring City of Mist to that kind of a group for same reasons, for the exact same reasons.
That's true. That's very true. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to give Fate a look at first, because I do like to move to that narrative sort of thing, and I don't like combat being the focus of things. I've had some good experiences with D&D 5th edition. I've also had some real headache times with it. Trying to balance encounters and just trying to, figure out how 6 people all wailing on your quote-unquote boss monster is going to make an exciting adventure, and you always want it to turn out like those big epic battles in Critical Role, but it never does. And... your bard pulls out heat metal, and you're like, what's heat metal?
And then you're like, oh.
And you're like, oh, it's that thing that cripples my bad guy?
Yeah.
Cool. With no saving throw? Cool.
Yeah.
And I just feel like and then for every time a combat encounter has been weird and awkward and difficult to balance and time consuming, because combat is time consuming. For every encounter there, then you've got another encounter that is like a social encounter where everybody wants more out of the social rules than D&D can provide. And you and I have had long discussions about how to make D&D's rules work outside of combat for literally anything.
Yeah.
And they're really vague.
Well, let me rephrase that a little bit. Do anything non-physical.
Yeah, exactly.
In D&D at all. Like, just make something non-physical work. With the same elegance as combat and physical actions.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, the amount of pages devoted to those things in that game prove where that game is loaded in that direction.
Yeah, no, exactly, and that's I think that was one of the earlier discussions we had. It might have even been like our first or second episode where we were talking about how picking the right game system for the type of game that you want to play into the type of story you want to tell,
and then a matter of matching that to the right players.
Yeah, exactly.
So or vice versa. So.
And I think at this point we're finding, and luckily I've got this show. Otherwise, I never would have looked at Savage Worlds.
No, probably not.
And I never would have fallen in love with the system.
And come up with whole new ideas. I mean, it is a creative muse for us. I will flat out say that this show is a creative muse for us because it was originally meant that way. Like when we sat down and would just have like tea chats, D&D tea chats, where we would go back and forth about games and mechanics and what was musing us and ideas for stories and things like that. And that leading into the podcast, I think the podcast has now bent back in that same direction. Now, instead of us doing all this research and things like that, we burn our muse into this, and then when it comes to our own stories, we're like, do I have an idea for this? And we go right back to what we did before, and we end up having a conversation either before or after show, and we're right back to where we were again, helping each other make better stories. Yep, absolutely. Which is the whole purpose of this. Yep, absolutely. And I love that. I love that we can keep telling stories, and that we just keep doing this. And it's like the whole art of storytelling is so deep that we can, 2 years later... and we're still just as enthusiastic about having these discussions. We're still finding new niches of topics to discuss. Oh, and sending complimentary videos, stories, things that we find where someone has done something with a twist. Just enough of a twist that we're like, oh, that's cool. I want to try that. That's a neat take on that, yeah. Dale Kingsmill? Kingsmill. I keep saying that wrong. Just did a thing about beholders. And moving it to a Lovecraftian direction. The video just came out, so if you're listening to this on or around April 28th of 2021. Yes. Dale Kingsmill, her YouTube channel is called Monarch's Factory. Did a whole thing on beholders and how she would kind of change how they act to make the encounters more interesting. Yeah. He sends me this video in a private chat and goes, "Don't ever effing do this." I said it kind of tongue in cheek. This is cool, but don't ever do this. But I thought it was a really great muse, and I'm not going to get into it because I do think we should get into dissecting some of the stuff that she and some other people do. Because I think it's beautiful, but I would say if you're ever wanting to see a twist on a beholder, a good classic beholder, and really thoughtful dissection of what it could be, it's beautiful. It's really well done, and I 100% applaud her. I absolutely support her. Yeah, yes. And I would say, again, through this show, we found a lot of muses, a lot of kindred minds out there. I found a lot of videos on YouTube that I am totally never going to go back to again because I'm like, okay, maybe in 2 or 3 years you're going to figure out D&D. Yeah. But whatever you're doing right now is not. I don't know what you're doing. This ain't it, Chief. Yeah, and it's interesting just to see. I would say as a whole, most of the top listed things that you're going to find on YouTube and such for assistance is pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
It's either pretty straightforward and or pretty intriguing. And I think the content that that D&D is putting out themselves, as they release their books and as they put content up, I highly recommend. Because if you don't want to go grab the new book on deities and gods, watch those videos.
Yeah.
They give you a nice 20-minute breakdown of what they were thinking about it, and then literally probably right underneath that video is someone's complete teardown.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fantastic. That is something that I think as storytellers we need. And we need that for every system, and it's out there, and that's beautiful.
Yeah, we do need that for every system, and honestly, like, you get spoiled by it. You get spoiled by it because, like, so, I can sit there and I can just shotgun D&D content all day.
Oh, yeah.
And good quality content, and never run into stuff that is like, low quality or bad takes.
Mm-hmm.
I could do a 24-hour stream of that for a week and never run out of good stuff to watch.
Probably not.
But then, man, try switching systems. Like, I have also recently, on top of being in a big Savage Worlds kick, been on a Legend of the Five Rings kick.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of still from when we did our system spotlight, I went out and I bought the player's guide and the beginner's kit for that as well. And Overwatch, if you're listening, we still want it. Very much like to play. We've been trying to bug him into running a game for us, so
much.
But anyway, I've been on a huge kick for that. So I've been like, putting in every search string I can possibly put into YouTube for Savage Worlds and Legend of the Five Rings content.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, there is some really good stuff out there. But what a lot of it is like, here's a beginner's video explaining the dice mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a beginner's video explaining combat. Like, okay, that's great, but there's only so many of those you can watch. Give me an in-depth analysis of how to build a thief in Savage Worlds. What edges should I take? What, where should I put my stats? What skills are most important for me, And you don't get that sort of stuff. There's a few reviews of some of their Splat books, but,
but I think that's the difference in system that you're getting that as well. I mean, it's interesting to say it, but I'm very interested in City of Mist. I'm interested in playing that with some friends and really sitting down and getting into it more and discovering, pulling the narrative, and having that be more to the forefront than I already do. But again, there's no real character building without group. And I kind of feel that like Savage World sits on the edge of that.
Yeah, that's fair.
You can totally number crunch a Savage World character together.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
100%.
Any game with mechanics, you're going to be able to toy with those mechanics,
right? But it's a matter of how important that is to that story style.
That's true. And I think Savage Worlds allows, because your characters are wild cards, because they're important in the story,
yes.
They get extra mechanics and such like that, extra survivability and whatnot. It's very pulpy in that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it does allow you a lot more wiggle room.
That's true. Do you think we should actually run through some of these questions?
I mean, maybe. Knox had one in the live chat.
Which one?
He says, what was your biggest aha moment where a puzzle piece clicked into place, and what was the reaction afterwards? Was it pride, dread at having to rework something, crazy motivation?
For the show, or something that we talked about on the show that clicked, discovery-wise?
I'm interpreting it as something we talked about on the show that made us think about our own games and go, oh, I know how we're going to do that now.
I think for me it was when we got into social combat.
Yeah?
That whole discussion that we had, that we did the teardown, like the research that led up to it.
Okay.
Just the simple concept of roll first, then talk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, what is your approach? I'm going to intimidate the guard. Great. Roll intimidation, add your proficiency for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got a 19. Okay. How are you intimidating the guard?
Yep.
And going that direction versus tell me what you're doing. Okay, that sounds like intimidation. Well, I'm not actually intimidating. I'm trying to persuade him. And you're negotiating. There's no negotiation when I have a sword in my hand and I say, I'm using my commander strike.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're doing a commander strike. It sounds like you're doing a lunge.
Right.
Like,
right.
you're never going to have that argument in that direction.
Yeah.
You might have what would be a better way to do that, or meta at the table about that. But just that simple concept of you have to treat D&D like D&D. You can't suddenly shift to a different system because you want people to role play, and therefore they should role play before their dice. Then you have to do that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
100% of everything you do has to be role play, and then that determines your approach.
Right. Okay, describe to me how you're going to hit the ogre. I don't know, I'm just going to roll an attack. No, you can't just roll an attack. How are you doing it?
Yeah.
No,
or I'm reaching into my pouch and pulling out my wand and pointing it at him and saying, Expellero, okay, so that means you're going to use your lightning. No, I want to do magic missile. Well, that's the lightning spell, so it sounds like you're doing lightning. That's, again, I think that is the thing that flipped my head of, like, I've been doing this wrong for so long. Oh my God.
Yeah, well, but
I've been doing a disservice.
But there's really, like, it feels like social roleplay is, social combat mechanics and stuff like that have only really started to come into games recently. I don't know that other than, like, well, okay, you're wrinkling your nose at me because you played 7th for years.
No. I'm laughing in my head because the thing that I heard in my head was, "Are there any girls there?"
Yeah. I mean, you think of D&D's origins and stuff like that. I mean, it's always been a combat game, and then people started to be like, well, okay, well, now I want to talk to the king. Oh, okay, is that a thing we can do? Like,
I want to be knightly.
Yeah, we're not just gonna, like, go back into the dungeon and get more gold and kill more orcs. Okay.
Well, I mean, DMs became elegant in the way that they were describing things, and
it became
voices.
a storytelling game.
Well, it became theater.
Yeah.
We went from theaters of the mind's eye to theater, and we had theater people playing it who had voices and acting and charm and poise and intimidation and whatever. And so it became table theater. Mm-hmm. Well, with table theater, you're acting. Your acting comes first and the gameplay becomes second eventually.
Yeah.
So
that's true. I think, and actually that kind of leads into what my biggest aha moment is.
Oh.
Is actually when we did Dan Harmon's Storytelling Circle.
Yeah, okay.
That is now how I conceive of my plots, period.
It's fantastic.
Like, it is now exactly, like, when I think, okay, well, where are they now? Where do I want them to end up? How am I going to get them there? And I take it through the storytelling circle of, like, okay. And then, obviously you can't write the entire arc.
No.
You have to leave some contingencies in there,
Right.
Some, like, okay, if they decide to do this, it'll go here instead. But, your main arc, like, if everything plays out perfectly, you can kind of map it.
Well, not only that, is that you don't have to map it. All you have to do is follow it. Mm-hmm. So even if your player's like, okay, where's our adventure starting? What are they being presented with? What is going to change that? Those things are there. That's part of the story. After that, you're literally just following the circle around. Mm-hmm. And as long as you follow that circle around, great. Now we have your plot hooks that we talked a couple episodes ago, where as long as you include those elements, everybody thinks it's an adventure.
Yeah.
You put 3 of those things in there, and suddenly it's an adventure, and everybody's like, wow, that was an amazing adventure, and all you did was follow some rote requirements.
Yeah.
Make sure you hit those things, and boom, you're solid.
And everybody just has so much fun with it.
Yeah, building adventures can be challenging. Mm-hmm. Building stories can be challenging. But the truth of the matter is, there's just some basic meat and potatoes you need, and a little bit of salt, and you can make any meal.
I'm so glad you said meat and potatoes, too, because that's one of those other things that I always keep coming back to. And it was, I think, one of the things you said to me, like, right around the time we were starting the show. Because I was fretting at you about, I'm like, oh man, I don't write big, twisty, complicated plots like you do. And I feel like that's a disservice to me, and you're like, no, you don't. You don't write deep, complicated plots. You know what you do? You make steak and potatoes. And I'm like, okay. And you're like, Everybody knows what a steak is. It's just a big slab of beef. Everybody knows what a potato is. It's just a spud you pull out of the ground. But man, you roast those potatoes to perfection. They are seasoned just right. They got just the right amount of butter, just the right amount of garlic. That steak is exactly as we order it. It is tender. It is savory. It is seasoned to perfection. It is cooked. It is warm, and we all know what's coming. It's a big slab of beef and a root you pulled out of the ground, a tuber.
Yep.
But damn, if it isn't good, if it isn't the tastiest that we've ever had.
Yep. And there's a reason why you go back to restaurants
Yeah.
Because you know what you're going to get, you know the quality you're going to receive, and when it doesn't happen, you're disappointed, but you're not disappointed with the meal. You're asking what happened to the chef. That's how you know you found a place you love.
Yeah.
And that's D&D. That is D&D.
And
100%.
The moment I started conceiving
that's every role play.
The moment I started conceiving of my storytelling style as comfort food D&D.
Yep.
Like it took so much pressure off of me. So like, just find like the of the wonderful gifts this show has given me, that's probably one of the biggest ones right there, cuz it took so much self-doubt about my own storytelling away.
So I'm gonna grab Overwatch's question.
All right.
I think it's Overwatch's question. I was like, yeah, because I'll save that. I'll say Hulu's for later. Apart from the whole everyone being forced to live in a Fallout vault dweller for a year, what one thing having to do with gaming, tabletop, or storytelling did you not see coming 2 years ago?
Oh, definitely.
When we first started the podcast, so I got to roll back my head that way.
Did I not see coming 2 years ago?
Yeah.
I think for me, it was definitely the prevalence and viability of online gaming.
Okay.
I mean, I could BS something here and say that I didn't see myself getting into so many other game systems that weren't D&D. But no, that's a lie. I hate D&D, and I try to get away from it as quick as possible. I always have. As much as I love 5th edition, you all know how I feel about 5th edition. I would rather play any other game system than D&D.
But it works.
Just because I think my storytelling style is not...
But you've discovered that. Like, you knew before that you didn't necessarily like D&D because of what it was, but every time you looked at it, you looked at aspects of it, not you.
Yeah.
Now you look at you and realize why.
Yeah. It feels like
therapy
that,
works.
It feels like that 5-year relationship where you're like, things were adequate and things were good. Things were good enough to be... There were happy times, too. But in the end, we're just not a good fit for each other.
I keep coming back to a good therapy session.
You wake up one day and you look at your D&D books and you realize you're not in love anymore.
That's right. Well, it's not them. It's you.
They just drifted apart,
That's
you know.
Right.
It was mutual. It was mutual. In the end, it was mutual.
It was mutual.
But no, I think like definitely the thing that kind of came out of nowhere was the viability of online gaming. I mean, we went through a couple iterations of it. Between trying to play just via Discord, using the Avray Discord bot. We were doing Tabletop Simulator for a little bit. And then we finally settled on Foundry VTT.
At the moment. It doesn't mean we're not going to find something here soon.
Yeah, sure. There was Fantasy Grounds as well.
Yeah.
Now, Sean mostly played with Fantasy Grounds.
Yeah.
And he was kind of trying to use that as a virtual tabletop, even long before the pandemic was even a twinkle in some virologist's eye.
Yeah.
But my experiences with Fantasy Ground were not great.
Same here.
It felt clunky to me.
Yeah, I think we've hit... I would have not expected as many virtual tabletops as we've had come out. Obviously, with the pandemic, that made a huge impact on going in that direction.
Oh, and Roll20 too.
Yeah. I would say I didn't expect that. I definitely did not expect the explosion of dice. Even with the pandemic, how many different people are producing and buying dice right now?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of amazing when you look at it.
Well, especially with the ubiquity of 3D printers nowadays,
Yeah,
and stuff like that, I think a lot of people who might have just been hobbyists about things before, they're like the tools to create things like that are becoming a lot more accessible.
Yeah.
Pourable resin and 3D printable stuff, and you can actually make your own dice pretty relatively easily.
Oh yeah. The resin kits and everything. It's amazing what you can do.
That's relative. I mean, don't get me
Right.
wrong. I'm not saying it is easy. I'm saying it's relatively easy.
It's definitely come to a home market on a way that's unprecedented.
Yeah, absolutely.
And at a speed that is kind of unprecedented. Like in less than 2 years, we went from having to create your own molds and people kind of teaching the methodology and finding errors and figuring out the right resins to the fact that you can literally get a kit for under $200 that does everything. And then you can just customize that however you like to make your own custom dice.
Yep.
And it's that accessible. And it's not just one group that's doing that. There's literally dozens of different companies that sell these things.
I gotta imagine this is also kind of a side effect of the whole celebrity D&D mainstream boom that we're seeing. I mean, do you think any of those ancillary products like DIY dice creation kits would have the same type of market if D&D hadn't become so mainstream?
That's a good question. I think it's hard to tell. I think that Critical Role definitely had a major impact on it.
It did.
I think that the conventions, let me put it this way. I think without it being, and I'll use the term televised, it's not, it's streamed.
Yeah. I gotcha.
When D&D went streaming and broadcast, I think it went at just the right time to push the market where it needed to go, because if it didn't, we would have had a death. And that's because we lost conventions. We lost contact in conventions, and that would have put a stake in a lot of properties. Instead,
that's a very good point.
The indie game market exploded. People were at home and able to play when they wanted to.
Yep, absolutely.
And that blew things up there in ways that no one saw that coming. I've seen so many things successfully get kickstarted because people are interested in these games. And it's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
who else you want to grab here? You want to grab Mad Elf?
Sure.
What's the most fun thing that's happened on a show?
Oh, Lord. Fun thing.
I keep thinking back to our days at Podcast Detroit, with Kate bringing in Nerf guns and ambushing us
just before the show.
And when we came in and we knew something was wrong, because Kate's usually either just chilling out in the
lobby area,
in the broadcast area already in our room, and she usually sat right in view of the door.
Yeah,
we came in and she wasn't there. I'm like,
the lights are off, but the doors are open.
The lights are off. Things are deathly silent in there, and we're like, Caitlin. Oh no! This isn't right. This isn't right. My spider sense is tingling.
Yeah. I think we only brought our own firearms once.
Yes.
Once. We got her back once, and I think it was worth it. But she got us twice or 3 times.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
Yeah, it was a semi-regular occurrence there.
Yeah. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. So I would agree. I think that was the most fun, beyond some of just her commentary of things that she did with other casts.
Yeah.
That were just off the wall, like the donut or stuff. Is it eating a donut or?
It was just slowly stirring some macaroni and cheese.
Yes. Oh God.
And turning the volume up on that.
The volume slowly cranking. Yeah. So Hulu asked, what expectations did you have when you started the podcast, and how have they changed over the 2 years? I think when we started the podcast, we had 0 expectations.
Yeah, I'm not a person who likes getting my hopes up about things. Because I figure if I have 0 expectations, I can't be disappointed in something.
Right.
I was gonna give it my best, and if it took off, then cool, and if it didn't take off, then we tried.
Yeah,
we had some fun.
Yeah.
I think maybe I expected it to take off a little more than it has.
But at the same time, like, we haven't advertised really.
But yeah, I mean, like, it's not by any. We have gotten exactly what we've put into it advertising wise. But
I would agree with that.
You and I are both notoriously awful at promoting ourselves.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of issues with, like, a lot of like forums, that we would be, Facebook groups or subreddits or whatever that we would be in have a very strict, like, no advertising rule.
Yeah.
Like, don't come in here and pimp your podcast. Like, we don't want to hear about it. Oh. All right. So how do
you get into those markets?
How do we let people know in this gigantic group of people who would love to listen to it because it's a like-minded group that this thing exists, but I guess we can't advertise here. So
yeah, it's hard. It's a really hard thing. I think moving forward, I think our expectations moving forward are just to try and get ourselves to a point where we're recognized. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
At some level.
So.
Like, I would like to start showing up in feeds. I think that's the thing for me. I don't know where. I don't even know how, but, I think that's a direction for us to go. And, I think we're getting there. I think we're taking our time to do it because that's just who we are. I think we're not here to drop, $10,000 on a marketing scheme to push ourselves into something.
Oh, no, absolutely not. So, we're a 2-person operation, operating essentially out of your basement.
We're getting exactly what we expect.
We're getting exactly what we expect here. So it's, but we have people in our live chat. We have we do have listeners, like we said, in Argentina.
We do.
We have a couple over over in Europe. And a lot of people here in the United States. So it's I think that just the fact that we do have regular listeners
is wonderful.
Like that is wonderful. I mean, even if it's a small community of 10, 20 people or whatever.
Yeah. We have our impact.
We've got our
I would say we have more than 20 people. I would say we're sub 500 dedicated.
Yeah.
But it's hard to tell. I mean, that's the other thing, is it's exceptionally hard to tell.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, if we go by our impressions that we're getting, we have thousands.
Mm-hmm.
But we really don't know what that leads to.
Exactly.
We have no good way to do those metrics. And they already said that, like, you can't look at those metrics and believe that those are absolute. You know that they're a minimum, but they are not an absolute.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right. What was the other thing that I was going to throw in here? What is it? I think we already kind of answered that one.
What would you say is the one game system that we've reviewed or done a spotlight on, or even just looked into for a separate piece? Like, for instance, I know we've talked about Amber.
Yeah.
And such like that, because of various other discussions of like social game systems. Burning Wheel was one of the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, of all these other game systems that are not D&D or Vampire, what would you say is the one system that's really, like, caught your eye and made you think, like, oh wow, like, I could see myself running that someday? And why?
Urban Shadows.
Okay.
Only because I see it as a progression from where I've gone with 7C.
Sure.
That it removes a huge aspect of 7C that is, I would say, the stumbling block in a lot of what I do.
Okay.
It is very narrative, and it removes combat in many ways.
Yeah, it really does.
It takes the chunkiness and kind of just sets that to the side and says, yes, it is that does happen.
Mm-hmm.
But that's part of a scene. That's not, it's not the thing that the story is wrapped around.
Right.
And I love the way that it pulls together a story through the players. It scares me a little bit because I look at something like that and I say that it takes the right players to play a game like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I have to remind myself that when I say that, I'm thinking of existing players that I play with today. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to mold them into that game and going, this isn't going to work. And that's the truth. It's not.
Yeah.
Just like not everybody likes to play Monopoly or checkers or chess.
Yeah, sure.
You know, so if you take someone who you just literally played 4.5 hours of Magic the Gathering with, and you're like, oh man, this person is totally going to love Chutes and Ladders. And then you look at that and you go, no, they're going to hate this. Crap, who the heck am I going to play with?
Right.
That's the feeling. That is straight up the feeling, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But I would have to say through this, I've discovered a lot more about what it means to present that to players and being able to find those players who'll play it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you do know that if you ever run Urban Shadows, you got Sean and I instantly. We have been batting Urban Shadows back and forth for probably 2 years now, going, well, are you going to run it or am I going to run it?
Right.
You know, and when and why.
Right.
You know, with who.
Yep.
So yeah, if you decide to put the hammer down on that one, then by all means, you got 2 players right there.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely Story. How about you?
Plus, Sean and I want to play in a game together.
You guys do need to play in a game together.
We've been talking about this. Hey, we have not... Seriously, we have been together for 8 years. We have never been in a game together.
Yeah.
One of us is behind the screen at all times.
Vicky and I are very much enjoying being able to play together. It's wonderful.
Yep. Absolutely.
I love being in a game for more than 3 sessions. It's been fantastic. That is one of the problems of being a storyteller is you often do not get to play. And I have had the joy of being able to play in games.
All those forever DMs, yeah.
Yep. So, yeah, I almost feel like there needs to be a special group for dungeon masters who want to play a game. Like dungeon masters only, or something like that. Do you long to play a game but never get a chance? Are you always a storyteller and never the story told?
Never the story told.
But I mean, that's the truth.
We got a new Twitter follower the other day, and I looked in their profile and they had hashtag forever DM. So sad. I'm so sorry. I want to hug you. No.
Yeah, but I do think that could be a total thing right there, where it's like, have you DM'd a game before? Yes. How many years? What systems? Once you get through all those, great. What would you like to play now?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll hook you up with the appropriate storyteller and get you rolling right ahead. And I just think it's necessary. I think that's something that storytellers need. You need a break.
Yeah.
You need that time to be able to play. So, and play with the people you want to play with.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, absolutely. I think that who you have at your table is probably more valuable than the game itself, honestly.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like what game system for me? Like I said, I'm on a big Savage Worlds kick right now.
I was going to say Savage Worlds is a huge thing, but I would say for you, without a doubt, Legend of the Five Rings. You're dying to play it.
I'm dying to play Legend of the Five Rings.
Yeah.
I'm dying to run Savage Worlds.
Yes.
And so that's. So yeah, there's just like 2 of them there, but yeah, no, I've got 5 Legend of the Five Rings. Like I think I would have a hard time running it personally, just because of my storytelling style, and it's more of a U game, more of a Rummel game, or an Overwatch game, But I would have a tough time running it. But boy, oh boy, did my head just start racing with character ideas when I read that. The setting.
Well, and the other thing is I could now you've played games with Mad Elf. Mm-hmm. I could see him running it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
There's a lot going on there, but I could totally see him running that and really enjoying it.
Really enjoying it.
Really, really enjoying it. So
yeah.
But he'd want to be in it without a doubt.
I would say those are my big 2 right there. Powered by the Apocalypse, I've definitely got a whole new appreciation for.
Mm-hmm.
I did not realize it was so multifaceted.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a couple others that they weren't on my radar before, and they kind of are now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any particular feelings about them, but I know their names, and I want to look into them, like the champion system.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. The Mad Elf was actually kind of trying to sell that one to us.
Well, yeah, there was that one, and then the updated Aeon stuff.
The updated Aeon stuff, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we're itching on that. So
I'm in the Kickstarter for the new adventure book.
Yep. And I mean, City of Mist has had a whole bunch of updates as well. Mm-hmm. I was on that Kickstarter, so I keep seeing those. So yeah, there's a lot of active stuff going on. It's wonderful to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes me happy to see that all of it's alive, and that we're able to be able to study it while we're doing things, you know? But
we got 10 minutes left. We should really jump on Knox's question.
And then Hulavu's final question on here.
Oh, I think we did.
Did we do that one already?
Yeah, we did that one.
Okay.
What expectations did we have?
Yeah, okay.
None.
No. All right. So Knox asked, in what aspect over the last 2 years do you think you've progressed the most as storytellers? Was there anything that maybe scared you a bit, but you realized wasn't so scary after all?
So I think where I progressed the most, and you can by all means argue with me on this one.
I will.
I know you will. I really think my story structure has gotten a lot better. My narrative flow and my story structure has gotten a lot better. I tended to do before a lot more of the, this would be cool. And I kind of like wrote scenes, and if they didn't, and not if, when the players decided to do something different, I then had to kind of scramble of like, oh, that's not how I wrote the scene. And I needed to break myself out of writing plays and writing flexible plots for storytelling games. And like I mentioned earlier, I think the whole Dan Harmon story circle thing helped me a lot. Your own descriptions of like how to move plot critical items around because nobody knows that they're not supposed to be in the safe. Now they're in the desk drawer. Whatever. The point is you searched the room, you found the key.
Yeah.
That was the only thing you needed to do.
Yeah.
It's Schrodinger's plot point.
Yeah. It's where you need it to be.
It's exactly where you need it to be. And I've done that a couple times and felt at first, I felt a little sleazy about it.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh God, I feel like I'm just I'm fudging
handing things to them.
I'm just handing it to them." But like, you guys didn't know. It had no effect on you whatsoever. And at the end of the game, when I was getting feedback from you guys, and you were like, "Oh, it was really great," and I thought it flowed here. It was cool that we were able to find this thing and move on to this other thing. And I was like, "Yes, fist pump."
Yeah. Well, it's the baby.
Yeah.
The baby doesn't know what's going on until it's presented to their world in front of them. You can totally play that up, and it works.
Yeah,
players don't know what they don't know.
So I would say just my storytelling, my narrative flow, has been my biggest pickup.
Okay.
What about you? And speak truly, or I will fight you.
I would. It's. My prep has changed. I will say that I am more conscious now of my encounters and their meaning.
Okay.
I think that was a big thing for me was that I was always focusing on the visual aspects of the story like I do with 7C.
Sure.
That I look at how is the scene coming together visually and what can I do to describe and get my vision out to the group? And I've started to pull away from that and say, okay, this is a scene. What's important for the scene? Then move on. Yeah. So I moved away from building huge sets on a theatrical stage that if you sat down and the curtain opened, you knew exactly everything that was going on without any actors on the stage. To couple spotlights, a table, 2 chairs. And the actors come in and only what's important shows up. AKA, a waitress comes in and sets 3 glasses down. Okay, we're at a restaurant. I didn't need to paint out the entire set for that scene.
And there will potentially be 3 people in this scene since there are 3 glasses, yes.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing is that you have to break down your descriptions to what is necessary.
Yeah.
And that's one of the hardest things for me to do.
Yep.
It is, without a doubt, it is not what I learned doing theater. It is not what I learned doing video production. It is not what I learned doing editing. I mean, I literally have had to break all of those things out of my head to get back to the basics of storytelling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And not burying details to be found later. And the best thing that I've done with that is my encounters, is cut down my encounters to to showcase what is important.
Was there any of that, or any of these changes that scared you a bit? That you've come to terms with? Like, did you have a moment where you were like, I'm gonna try this and it's not gonna work, it's gonna be absolutely disastrous, and then afterwards you were like,
Yes.
You had your kombucha girl moment.
Yes, I wrote significantly less for one episode.
Okay.
One session, I literally only had 7 bullet points. In it, like just 7 pieces of text.
Yep.
That were 2 sentences each, and NPC names. And those NPC names had their motivations, and that was it. I didn't even have physical encounter mechanics. And it worked.
Yeah.
And as long as I stayed on my bullet points, and as long as I stayed to the circle for that adventure, it worked flawlessly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the one thing that I still need to work on is knowing that I can stop the circle at any point in an adventure. I can pause. Wherever it feels okay, don't push through to the end.
Right.
That's I still fail at that every time. I want to get to the end.
No, it's fine. You want to tell a complete story because you don't want to leave us on a cliffhanger.
Right.
So.
I hate doing that, but I have to remember that you never want to push to exhaustion. Never push your players to exhaustion, and because otherwise you'll just have a crappy ending.
You want to know what my big scary one was?
What was it?
Yes, and.
Ooh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, because so I'm that, like, sweaty, serious, want everything to be super dramatic sort of storyteller. I want my players to take the game as seriously as I do, and I want these, like, deep dramatic moments, and then when you get players who are like, my character's name is Dinglehopper, like, can you not, you know?
Yeah.
And especially then when they start doing goofy stuff, then you're like, oh god, no, I'm just trying to tell a serious story, and you're clowning around. And there's like in-character clowning around, and then there's stuff that you're like, you're just doing this to be annoying. And I have a knee-jerk reaction to it now. Yeah. You know, so whenever I smell clowning around, I instantly just start clenching up, you know? And it's been a process of me to just let go and yes and a little bit, you know. My name, you know, you can call me Aerosmith, was a believe it or not, as much as we were all laughing about it, was a stepping stone moment for me, because I clinched up at that moment. I'm like, why do you have to make a pop culture reference right now? And then I was like, no, that's funny.
It works.
That's funny.
Yep.
And then the Surly Girl Scout Inn was the other one. I was like, there's no Girl Scouts in my setting. Why would you say that? And then I'm like, no, you know what? You have a Surly Girl Scout Inn. That's fine. Yep.
We just roll on.
We're just going to roll on. It's not important. It's not worth clinching up over. Just have fun. Move on. Make it a thing, and then it won't be a thing anymore. And
exactly. Fine. You want the Surly Girl Scout Inn? I'll show you.
I'll show you the Surly Girl Scout Inn.
Yeah.
And it was the worst night's sleep you guys ever got.
It is true. It is true. So thank you, everyone, for joining us for this anniversary. We're actually going to be stepping back for next week's topic. We're going to go back to Role-Playing 101 and how to get yourself into character, like what it takes.
Yeah, we've had some discussions about some of our newer players who've been talking about. I find it difficult to like play a character, so we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna explore it.
Yeah, I think there's some direction there, and there's some stuff I've researched, and it's interesting to see what's changed over the years.
Yeah.
So
you can find us on Twitter at @ST_Conclave, on Instagram at @ST_Conclave. Listen to us live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave, and hop on our Discord. You can join the discussion there. Possibly join the live chat during our shows. You can find that link up on our Twitter as well as our website, storytellerconclave.com.
We'd like to thank our Patreon members, especially our named members, Knox in the Box, Sam, the Arcane Asylum, Sparkle Motion Veteran, and Huluvu. We really appreciate all the assistance that you guys have given us for the last 2 years, and hope that you will stay on with us and keeping this going. Our pre-show music is by Arcane Anthems. You can find that at patreon.com/arcaneanthems. Our intro music, Beyond the Warrior by Geefrog, you can find that at geefrogmusic.weebly.com. And our outro music, which you're hearing now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Midair Machine. You can find that at soundcloud.com/midairmachine/tracks.
And as always, big shout out to our families, Vicky and Sean. We love you so much for supporting us over
Thank
these
you.
years. All of our friends who've sat with us at our tables over the years to give us these great stories to share with you. And you, every single one of our listeners, we love you so much.
Love you.
Stay safe. Good night.
Good night.